Oh man, I'm breathing heavy. Hello, hello. How's everybody doing? I have no idea how many people are in here. I'm just getting my pages going. Alright, I got Twitch up. How you guys doing? What's going on? We got 16 people on Twitch. Just for anybody that's on here, I know we've got it on Facebook as well. Yeah, Twitch and Facebook right now. I don't know about YouTube. YouTube's probably coming up here in a second, but yeah, I'm gonna close the ZBrush live one. Okay, looks like Thomas Whittlesbach's got a lockdown on YouTube. Ugh! No, just kidding. I kind of wish I could watch his stream, to be honest. Yeah, so if you guys are on Facebook right now, I'm checking in. I'm going to do better this time. If you guys tuned in last stream, man, it's a nightmare trying to check on all three. So if I miss anybody's questions or if you guys have stuff you throw out, I'm trying my best. But I'll see if I can do a little better job of checking in. Mauricio on Facebook. Hello. How's it going? Okay, so today I'm gonna wrap up. I'm not gonna wrap it up, but I'm gonna finish up all this Lego stuff. If you guys have been checking out my other streams, I've been trying to slowly whittle down on a few things, and I keep having more ideas. Just FYI for what this stream's gonna be about is just building stuff with Legos and ZBrush. So I started off with this project with my coworker Ashley. So we're trying to recreate Lego parts to scale, and then using ZBrush as a remesh and Nanomesh to build stuff, very quickly. So tiling pieces up and across and all that jazz. So we've been kind of just blocking out some scenes here, and I'm trying to finish up all these assets for her, so eventually she can render in Arnold. So we're porting everything over using GoZ to send everything to Maya and building scenes and all of that, and then doing final renders with Arnold. So this is pretty much just me going through and just making some stuff. Dougie, how's it going? Thanks for tuning in again. I remember you from the last couple streams. What's new? Happy holidays. So I guess we can get started. I think the last place I left off. Oh, let me not cover up my little artwork there. The last place I left off, I was somewhere around here. So I started I got this rough scene going around, and I think the last thing I did was I was trying to build columns. So if you take a look at the old Cave of Wonders scene, this is kind of what we're going for. If you guys remember this scene in Aladdin where he's hanging off of the ledge and trying to get some Lego pieces to kind of resemble these rocky columns in the background. And then, I don't know, I think after the last stream, Ash and I were talking and we were thinking about, well, what about trying to figure out this, you've got this cylindrical sort of tunnel going down, trying to figure out where things end and how to build this scene digitally and create all this depth and space between it with Legos. So kind of keeping in mind that it's all building from something, and all like this, you can see the cave is kind of wrapping down at an angle. So some things we might not be able to get perfectly. I guess that's a part of the magic with this whole Lego stuff. But then we started talking about the tiger cave entrance. So thinking about how can we go in and actually, what if we did a fly through, going through the mouth, which ends up being the tunnel. And it kind of hit me that all this stuff I've been building, there's no cap or roof to this thing. We were thinking about light bouncing off of maybe the roof, or how far does that go up. And then we realized that, well, part of it is that the cave, the entrance itself, is kind of consumed or within the actual mouth of the tiger. So I just kind of went in and started sculpting an actual cave. So this is about where I'm at. I think I might just kind of touch this up a little bit, but the goal is to kind of, I think I'm going to touch this up and do a little, take a break from the Lego stuff and just do some sculpting, kind of tweak this. But eventually I got to turn this into Legos or make it look Lego-like. I don't know how crazy I want to get with trying to build this with Lego parts. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that we could do it. Like, I maybe don't want it to be blocky, but maybe I could replace it with some sort of Lego, some modern Lego pieces. We'll see. But I guess first thing I wanted to touch on before I jump into the sculpting part and convert this to a sort of brick-like thing, I left off trying to do some cylindrical parts. So building this actual tunnel. And we started off with just doing, like, I was doing some of these sort of large scale in the y-axis columns, but it was like, it doesn't look good because it's all kind of the same piece, so I wanted to randomize it. So to give you guys a quick kind of demonstration of what, I actually found a better workflow than what I was doing before, which was a remesh and then spinning it around. And well, anyways, if you saw the last stream, I think that was about where I ended off. So actually I found this really great technique using Nanomesh. So just to give you guys an idea, well, let's see, I'll put this guy up here, tuck that down here. And let me go to my favorite matte cap pearl, because that just looks better. So I've got, all these columns, and it's kind of a pain to get these things aligned. So the first thing I did is I've got my scene proxy, so I'm building it in a separate tool, and I've got the final scene here, which as of right now, the goal is to kind of get this angle. And I kind of removed all the old columns just to kind of start from scratch. So this is just like the foreground or kind of the main element of where the shot's going to be. And I also need to change the fact that he's smiling. He's not supposed to be smiling. He's supposed to be like very terrified. So I might do some Photoshop painting, maybe do ZBrush paint, send it to Photoshop to do it on the textured version, and then apply it in ZBrush. We'll see. But to get this stuff going, so what I started doing was, okay, I knew, like, if you're building from a Lego piece, right, like you're going to have a ground, and most likely you're going to be building on, if you ever had those old Lego sets, they had the really big ground, like little flat piece that you could sort of build on top of if you're doing like a city scene or something like that. So I started off by just making just an array of these 2x4 bricks at the ground. And then I was thinking, well, okay, well, what if I just use Nanomesh? If you guys have never used Nanomesh, you can basically draw things. Like if I were to go, I don't know, just grab a insert brush, and let's go grab just like, I don't know, like the insert H cube. So you can grab an insert brush, and then you can go to the brush. I'm just going to the brush menu here, or clicking B, and you have this option. Once you have an insert mesh selected, you do create Nanomesh brush. So what that does is it assigns it to the Z modeler brush, and when you hover over a poly, you have this option, so you can actually draw it on top of polygons. So I was thinking, okay, well then if that's the case, then maybe I could just draw combinations of Lego pieces tiled together. So I started like playing around physically with like little pieces, stacking them up, and figuring out how can I make these columns more interesting. So I kind of just went in and I built all, I don't know, I've got a good maybe 100 pieces. Let's see, what do I got in here? The master Lego tool. This one I've kind of kept as a separate thing. Like I've gone in, I did like a Lego trash can, I did for some other things, like, I got all kinds of like individual parts, but then taking some of these main pieces that I built and then going in and combining them to create these sort of stacks. So just thinking of these as like tileable pieces. So I just want to stack them on top of each other a ton of times to make that column. So I did, let's see, I got 3 variations trying to change up the way that I build it. So some with like these little individual caps, some with the single cap stacks like this. So taking these 3, what I can do now, you think of it in the Nanomesh way, is I could take this. This is going to be difficult because there's no way I can isolate an individual poly to draw on top of, because I've got all these, obviously, polygons dividing each one of these. But what I did is I took the dimensions of the brick, the width and the height, plus the cap, and then I just created a new tiled ground with this cap. So you can see, let's go just these guys and this one. So you can see those just kind of fit within those boundaries. So I lined it up, almost lined it up. I want to check that to make sure this thing's looking right. Yeah, that's a little off. Well, it should be okay. Maybe I can fix this. I'm kind of going crazy, like I have so many files for this project. I'm sure you guys deal with on your own if you guys use ZBrush on a daily basis, and stuff just gets a little chaotic. You know, you got to spend a day to go clean up your files, but hey, you know, part of the process. But what I want to do is just make sure this lines up a little better. Alright, cool. So these basically tile up so that they're sitting on top, and then what I can do is take this nano ground and I can polygroup this thing by itself. And essentially what I want to do is I want to use Nanomesh and polygroups to speed up this process. So if let's see, if I go back to my cave scene, let's turn off this is the one right here. So I've got these mirrored. Actually, no, I don't. So I'm going to grab the brick capped ground. Let's do this. Let's clean up the scene. This guy. And this one. Alright, so this is my scene proxy. This is the final scene. So I'm going to insert the brick cap ground into this guy, which they're in the same place. So this is just sitting way down below. So I can get it just enough depth. I might have to bring it down further. We'll see. So there's the brick cap ground, and then here's the flat one. So I can bring the flat one into this. Now, I'll go ahead and turn that one off. So what I want to do is sort of create a cylindrical sort of array around. So I gotta give myself some sort of frame of reference for how big I want that cave to be, like how much space and all that. So easy way to do that. I could go in. I'm just gonna grab a cylinder first. I'm just gonna work on a separate tool, and this is what I did. I took the initialized cylinder, and this one you've got this inner radius, so I'm gonna kind of just give myself a little thickness here, and then let's cylinder 3D1. So then I'm gonna go back here, and I can insert this cylinder 3D1 here. Now I can scale this thing up to kind of give myself a little point of reference. So I'm going to say, like, I want it to go, you know, roughly about maybe here, something like that. And then let's bring this thing down below. So I'm just tucking it just underneath the polygons, which will make more sense. So I'm going to be able to now work on this guy and then the brick nano ground. There we go. And let's turn that on. So I can kind of see the silhouette of this. Now for this thing, these are all divided up into, each 2x4 thing is divided up into, divided in half, basically. So what I can first do is go in, I'm going to kind of use this as reference to kind of draw a polygroup, different polygroups around the space of this. So I can turn on my symmetry, and I can go in and hold spacebar over the poly, select polygroup, and a single poly. So now I can go in and start painting. Oops, let's see. No symmetry for this. So I'm going to kind of just make sort of a jagged selection of these groups here. So I'm just holding Alt and clicking, and it's right now it's the white group, which is going to allow me to assign all the selected white parts to different other polygroup colors eventually. But it doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, I think it might be nice. Like, I just think of this as like a background element, so I'm not too worried about it being a perfect circle, which we don't even really have that option with these Legos anyways. Maybe not that one. Alright, so then I can just solo this out. Now with these all selected, I can click and hold left mouse button, and while I'm holding left mouse, now I'm letting go of the keyboard, so now I can just tap the Alt key and cycle through different polygroup colors. So I can kind of just give it a quick, you know, in solid polygroup color. And then let's say I'll grab this guy, and we can do, let's go polygroup. This is what's really interesting. You can go polygroup, polygroup all, so you can alt click on this and then cycle through different colors. And then maybe if I wanted to do these purple ones to say like a red, and then it remembers the previous, so now I can go back to a single and just assign that one, so that way I keep those the same color group. So now I'm just kind of painting in where I'm going to use that Nanomesh stuff. And then eventually what I wanted to do is I'm going to assign these nanos to each poly group, but I don't want to do all of these same, let's see, all of the same cylinder parts, which would be of these 3 groups. So I kind of want to randomize these. So I'm going to go back to the floor grid, and then I'm just going to go and kind of maybe go alt click every other, or try and add some extra groups in between. Alright, that's pretty good. So I'll left mouse button click and hold, and then tap Alt to cycle through. So I just pick a color that is contrasting enough so I know I can see the difference. Sometimes you get 2 groups that are the same color, which it'll still be different, but it looks the same. That's kind of the point, I guess. My audio is very low. Sorry, Mark, I just saw your comment. Okay, I'm putting this thing closer. I just noticed I was breathing really loud at the beginning, so maybe I was just huffing and puffing, but is that better? Let me know. Nick Saltis, how's it going, man? Nick's one of my former students at the LA Film School. How's it going, man? What's going on? See, you're on Facebook. I'm just, you know, doing some Lego stuff. Okay, Mark says my mic is good. Audio, Doug says it's good too. Okay, sweet. And then let's just do a couple more. So I'm gonna alt click, do a 3rd group in the other spaces. So I'm trying to get it so I don't have one shared group next to another. Every adjacent group is a different color. Okay, cool. We'll see how that works, and I can tweak it as I go along. So I've got this sort of, at least I've got the cave of the direction of where I'm going. So now the next thing would be to start to assign Nanomesh groups to these. So what I can do is go back to my combination stacks here. So I can start with stack number 1, and you'll see in my tool, I've actually gone through, this has been a really, I actually read a whole, oh, you guys can see this, I'll show you. So the whole thing started from this magazine. So this magazine has a full spread on how they, the pipeline that they created for Lego Batman, which was kind of taken off of the Lego movie. So I found out that a lot of the stuff, like they'll build the parts to scale. They were using Lego Digital Designer, which I've incorporated for reference if you've watched any of my other streams, and actually building the parts. But then as far as like reducing poly count, like when you're repeating all these parts, obviously this stuff gets super intensely high poly, and it's going to be a lot of work to clean up, get it over to Maya, and have Maya hold the scene, or any 3D application for that matter. ZBrush does a really good job at even, you know, up into hundreds of polygon range, but then when you want to send it over, that's where you got to go through reduction, displacement maps, normals, you know, all of that stuff if you guys are familiar. So in this case, I ended up doing like different stages. So I built all the parts, and I built them at the lowest possible resolution, and then I went through and I added subdivisions, beveling. So I did a low res, medium res, and high res. So basically I'm just working on the low res, and eventually the high res would be sort of the smooth creased version where you would get you know, like nice clean edges and all of that with, you know, either smooth preview, or what I'm trying to do is reduce it as low as I possibly can without subdivisions. Like this would be sort of like a medium res right here, and I've added subdivisions, but I've gone through and actually deleted hidden geo in some parts that you don't see. So like if you go and look at this, like I got rid of this cap, and then even on this bottom part, some of those parts are, so anything that's not visible, I've actually, like even on the bottom, this thing's not closed. I tried to go through and keep everything sealed as a Lego piece would be, but it's just too many polys, especially when you get into repeating tons and tons of parts. So I've been able to consolidate stuff a little bit doing that way. That's something I learned from this magazine, actually, that they did this. So they went in, they built all these parts, and they just removed any geo from the pieces that are not visible. So that way when they go through, and then the team that goes and builds with those parts, they don't have to deal with, you know, they know that it's the lowest possible range of count that they can possibly get, and then you figure it out from there. So some of these parts I've spent a lot of time doing that, all these stacked pieces and things like that. Really it's just the stuff that I'm tiling a ton of, that I had to get really specific with. Like even this, like you'll see I did this with live boolean to get a flat crease across. Then I realized when the boolean generated, it created all these extra verts that were all in there and just added to the count. So you'll see that this is actually a separate piece, just jammed into the surface, just with the faces along this edge to be flattened. So had to get really creative with it, and I can only imagine what it was like for them in the film. I think it was something like 18 to 20 million, you know, blocks per scene. Like each scene was just incredible amounts of, you know, geometry shells. So it gets pretty intense. But you know, with ZBrush we can, you know, now that we've got everything consolidated, I can go through and repeat it, and I know that I'm doing it the best that I can. So anyway, so if I go back to, I got this piece. Now what I want to do is look at it from the top. So I'm going to draw this thing on top of these polys. So when I draw it, these polys, it's going to be drawing based on the surface normal, so straight up. So what I need to do is look at the part that going back to my separate tool, and I'm just rotating, holding shift, so I'm looking at it from the top view, and that's all I need to do. Regardless if perspective's on or off, as long as you're holding shift and you lock to that orthographic view, it'll work. But I just work with perspective off. So then click on the brush, and the first thing I got to do is create this as an insert mesh. So this is going to allow me to draw it, but it's not going to allow me to insert it with Nanomesh and use those polygroups. So once it's an insert mesh, you'll see it'll say insert mesh here. I go back to the brush menu and I take that insert mesh and I do create Nanomesh. So you can't create the Nanomesh brush until you create the insert brush. And then if I go back here to my floor grid, now let's say I can start with this sort of teal blue group. If I click and drag on this, if I just click and drag outwards, it's going to drag one. And then while I'm dragging, if I hold shift, it's going to lock it to all the other polygroups that had the shared group. So now it's doing it to all the blue ones. And then that's basically all I need to do. I don't need to scale it up or anything. I can deal with all this stuff, the rotation and the offset, in the Nanomesh palette. So if I go here now, you'll see we got, you know, all of our options. And the first thing it does is it takes the rotation, like when you draw, when you're drawing this thing out, see that rotation, Z rotation, it's calculated based on the way you draw your mouse. So when I let go, first thing I'm going to do is set this to no rotation in Z. And then I need to now use the polygroups, because these things are built to scale. Basically, imagine that each one of these bricks is going to have 2x4 caps across that's going to line up with these pieces. So then all I need to do is set my settings. So the first thing you want to do is basically, if you're doing it per polygroup, and I know the polygroups are built to scale, I'm going to set the size to 1. So setting it to 1 is going to at least align it to the actual polygroup itself, but then the proportion, fit, fill, constrain, and clip, these settings are going to control how it matches to the polygroup itself, or that poly. So in this case, the one that works is fill. So when I set it to fill, that fills it to the complete furthest edge on each axes for that polygroup. So you see size of 1, if I go lower, it's not going to match. But leaving this at 1 and setting fill, you'll see fit is going to shrink it a little bit. So fit shrinks it to not hit the edges, and then proportional is just based on the actual mesh. So fill is perfect. And then the only thing I need to do now is this thing is actually jammed into the surface. So this is dealing with the Z offset of the poly. So I simply just need to also set this to 1, and that's going to put it perfectly on top of that piece. So basically this gives me a starting point. So now instead of me having to go through and do arrays first and then position them manually, I can get it in place based on the actual brick ground. So I'm doing it on the nano ground with the flat polys, and then basically what I'll do is go to my Nanomesh once I got that set up. So size of 1, no rotation, Z offset is 1, and fill is on. And then I'll just go click 1 to mesh. So now I've actually made those. So before you'll see it's only 10,000 points. It actually hasn't made these pieces. And then, you know, another thing you could do is if I wanted to actually randomize this even more, you know, I could just, you know, go into my random distribution and you'll see I can reduce, and it might offset it in different places, which in this case, that's not going to be good. So I don't want any randomization. I just want this to fit perfectly. But if you weren't doing that, you could use that to your advantage if you wanted to make that stuff a little bit more random and interesting. And then 1 to mesh, and then now I can just grab this group. So I'm only going to show, you can either, what I'm doing is Control-Shift clicking on the brick ground, Control-Shift-A to grow all. So now these things are hidden. And then I'm just going to do my split hidden. So now I just split these guys off into their own tool. And then I can just rename these cave sill column 1. I'll leave it at that. And then I'll turn that guy off. Okay, so I got one down, and then I want to just go through and complete this. So first thing I'm going to do is get the base level. So I'm going to get the base levels going, then I'll do arrays. So I'll go back to my cylinder columns. And let's go with stack 2 and just rinse and repeat. So I'll make an insert mesh and then make a nano mesh. And then let's say I'll do these to the yellows. So hold shift and then put in my settings. And then Z offset. Nope, that's right. 1. In this case, for some reason, it's shrinking, so I'm not even going to mess with it. I feel like I spend more time going through settings in the stream than actually doing stuff, so I'm just going to brute force it. 1.7, going up to the edge. Yep, that'll work. So in this case, I changed it to fit. And then I just manually sized up until I'm hitting those borders. And then let's make that. And then split hidden. So there we go. So I got another baseline. This one's a little taller. Like, ideally, I'd like them to all be the same size, but oh well. I can manage with this. And then I'm going to take this subtool name, copy this over. So I got a couple variations, column 1, column 2. And let's do one more. So stack 3. And what do I have left? The purple thing? I think I have the purple. Set that to 1. And let's do 0 rotation and then offset of 1. I think it was 1.7? No, 1.5. And okay, sweet. So I got my 3 columns. So these 3, they're at least I got enough randomization. And then something I noticed too is like with the way that the bricks kind of line up, like if I turn on the brick cap now, so these guys, there's going to be some space between them. Like if I turn off the thing really quick, obviously there's space, so I might need to go through and actually do some filler in some other locations, like maybe kind of fill a couple layers around. But I'll get this first one going and then see how I can make that work, because obviously I want it to be sort of airtight if I'm going for that sort of cave, based on that cave reference. And so now I just want to take these guys and I want to do some arrays. So if you watch my other streams, I've been using I have the spacer alignment tool, which I bring this thing in. This is basically just like, it's got the proper divisions and the space between everything. But for now, I think I can just make this easy on myself and stop being so like crazy about trying to make everything perfect. The pieces themselves have been built to scale, so that's good enough for me. And then I'm just going to go in now to my array mesh settings. So this is where we're just going to take all this stuff and just stack it up and create this sort of cave. So then this is where I go into my array mesh settings, and I'm going to turn off everything, reset, and then easy way is click lock position and size. So I'm just going to keep this thing the same size and in the same position. And let's start with, say, let's do a repeat of 80 for these guys. And then I'm going to go into transpose. So clicking that transpose option, and then if I turn off the gizmo, this allows me to use the transpose tool and start dragging these up. So I'm just scaling outwards. Whoops. You'll see by grabbing different ones, the top circle is going to stretch it. The middle circle is just going to move it straight upwards. So I'm just clicking in the middle, and then if I don't hold shift, you see I go offset, which could be really interesting, right? If I wanted to create like tiled sort of pieces or stacking pieces like that. But I just want to bring these guys straight up. So zooming out, you get a higher rate of tolerance to kind of scale it up quicker. Then I'm just going to bring it in so it's stacked on top of each other. Alright, so we'll say that one's pretty good. And some of these pieces like that one, I did a rep of 80, because these ones are sort of half the size of those. So I might copy these settings first, but then once I've copied, I want to make these. So I'm going to click Make Mesh. So this is actually going to generate them, so they're going to go up to the total count for that. So whatever this is going to be, we'll see. I can reduce it. I may not need the entire array around the entire cave. I might need like 3/4 of it. We'll see what happens when I bring it over to the final scene. Joffrey, how's it going? Yeah, Lego Salt. I've been doing this thing forever. This is officially my last stream. Actually, for you guys that are tuned in, I'm going to change it up for the next couple months. Going to try something new. We want to do something called ZBrush mashup. Something I was talking to Kyle about the other day, about taking two concepts. We're going to make two wheels, and we're going to put like different topics. So like, if you guys saw, there was a big something that went around. Well, you guys tell me what you think, those of you that are watching. There was a Pikachu and Deadpool mashup. Somebody mashed, and then like Ryan Reynolds shared it on his Instagram or something. So I was thinking, what if we just do that like once a week or once a month, where we'll do a show where we'll spin the wheel, we'll pick two concepts, you guys can pick the themes or whatever, and I'll just do a mashup combo of a sculpt. So I'll take like Marvel and Star Wars, or whatever, anything crazy. So that way I'm going to get into more sculpting and try and make a show out of it. I think it'd be really fun. We could come up with all kinds of crazy mashups and see what we can do. But I think that's my goal after this stream, is to get away from the Lego stuff for a while. So let's see, I got that stuff is done, and I made that one. So I'm going to go back to the other guys. So I've got two other columns here. Now I copied that array mesh setting, so if I turn this on and if I just paste it, it's going to apply those same settings. Now for these ones, I'm sure I don't need 80. I'm going to cut this down to 40. And there we go, we've already got some space between. So now I'm just clicking W to turn on the move, scale, and rotate. So this is still on transpose mode and the settings are still there. So now I can just bring these guys down. And that looks pretty good. So I'm going to copy these settings, and then let's make that mesh. And one more. So this is the last one. And let's go array mesh, turn this on, and then paste. Now let's see how this is going to line up. So that's definitely not enough. Let's go up to 80 for these guys too. And then stretch it up to see where the space is. Yeah, that's got a little space between it. So I can zoom in really close to kind of readjust the position. And if I want it to be perfect, like the space between each Lego, that's what I used that Lego spacer that was to scale. It was like the space between the Legos, it ends up being 0.02 millimeters or 0.2 millimeters. I forget. But now I can go in and type values. So if I don't want to be 79.75, I could do 79.74, or maybe go up to 78 and just slightly make those adjustments. And then if this thing is still, if it's going too far, like this is clearly going much further up above, if I wanted it to level out, what I can do is the rep is total of 80, but you can tell the pattern length where to go. So you can tell it to go to say like 75. So if I type in 75 and click enter, that's going to show me where I'm at. So I'll go down 72. There you go. That should work. And then let's make it. ZBrush mashup hype. Yeah, get it going, Kyle. I think that's going to kill. I think that's going to be really fun too. That'll be good for me, and then I can get back into some sculpting and do more of that. Alright, so I got the things made, so then now it's just about getting the scene set up and trying to figure out how this is all kind of meshing together. So what I'm going to do is, this is my proxy scene, so I'm going to go over to my final scene, which I don't, whoops. See, I'm going to click this open, that's the combo stacks. Oh, no, it worked out. I actually did it in the right scene. So I'm actually in the final scene. That works out. So then I would just insert them in here. So then now it's just about figuring out where everything is. So I'm going to get rid of this cylinder. I don't need that. And then I'm clicking above this guy so I have the, if you guys haven't started using these arrows, turning on the arrow, anything below until it meets another arrow. If I don't have it selected, that'll enable multiple subtools. So if I want to turn on the whole character, I can just click that and everything turns on until it meets another thing. So you see that still stayed off. So I can kind of get an idea of where I'm at in the scene by turning everything on. Alright, so I'm going to select the head. Give myself a point of reference. So the cave I think is sitting like somewhere above. Like so this is kind of like where the top of the cave that's traveling downwards is going to cap off here, and then maybe the tiger or the tiger head's going to take over at this point. So I can turn on transparency. Let's see if I can find out where this is. Alright, cool. So for these pieces, I definitely am not going to need, maybe get rid of all this. And then I could do Control-Shift-A to grow all. So I can, like if I made a selection, didn't complete a shell, I can do that and finish this off. And then I think I'm going to split the hidden. So we'll save, I'll just save these as a backup and then turn that subtool off. And then let's do it for the rest of them too. So I can undo that, inverse Control-Shift-A this direction. There we go. And then let's split hidden. what's left? This guy. Alright, and split those guys. So I could even hold control and hit the down arrow to put all the backup ones in a chain here. So now if I click the arrow for that one, I can turn these on or off together. Okay, great. So that's off. So now I've got, and then I can turn these guys on together. So these are a group. So as long as I have that selected, now I can toggle those on and off. Excellent. Alright, so let's take a look. What I probably should do, I think I'm going to do this really quick, is just go in and just send it over to Keyshot. So I'm going to just do a quick previs and just kind of see how this stuff is meshing. So let's go external render Keyshot. Then I can check the chat. Dougie, I'm just reading your comment. We're going to suggest the Lego Star Wars Jedi and Lego SS Titanic. Dude, that sounds fantastic. See, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. I want to do obscure mashups. I don't want to do any, like, it's got to be random. I'm all on board for that. And that's actually, I mean, I don't know. It's Dougie, so I'm guessing you saw Star Wars and you didn't like it. Is that the case? I mean, for sure, I'll do it either way, regardless of how I feel. I thought it was fun. I actually liked it, but I like Rian Johnson. I guess I'm still trying to wrap my mind around with Star Wars what the... Is everybody upset about the fact that it's... that they added stuff, like Jedi abilities and the whole Luke astro projection stuff? I'm trying to figure out what the... or maybe it was too comical. You tell me. I'm trying to figure out what the general consensus is on that, because I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it. Let's go. Let's see if I can get an environment up in here. Sun and sky probably would work. I think it's... let's go sunset. Yeah, that's just too dark, though. Yeah, like those gaps are definitely going to have to be filled for sure. Alright, so I'm going to kick this guy over to the left side and let him sit for a minute. Alright, so the next thing is I'm definitely going to have to clean up some of those edges, but the first thing I want to do is actually, so that kind of covers the cylinder part. Hopefully that explains it. And I know for sure that for the scene, I realized that the steps here, I don't need a lot of this space, so I can actually go in and let's get rid of, like, well, I don't know, maybe all of these. Split those. Put those in the backup chain. Perfect. Now we're talking. Alright, so I gotta get this tiger head up in here. I think this is where I'm gonna start doing a little sculpting here. Dougie, you got a question. Let me check it out. When you set selection rect, shift control. Okay, so you're saying, let me see if I can grab something. Like if I solo this out. So you're using the selection rectangle and you're drawing over something and it's not grabbing it. You had to restart ZBrush a few times. If the selection lasso, okay, well, if it's not working for you, that's strange. I've never seen it do that where you have to go through a restart in that way. You'd have to go through, okay, you have to, what are your system specs? Like what kind of machine are you running on? You run on a desktop, a notebook? Basically, with the selection process, I don't know if this helps, but if you're selecting something, like if you go over and you select over a face like this, it's actually not going to grab anything. The selection brushes work based on the vertex point, so when you actually hover over a point. So if you have selection rectangle, make sure you're grabbing over a vertex. So you see when I go over this, it'll grab just that portion there. But if I go over just this individual face here, if there's anything behind it, it'll grab it. But like from this angle, you see when I go here, it's not going to do anything. Desktop dual processor. Okay, so you should be fine. It shouldn't be anything that's processor intensive or graphical. The selection rectangle, or the rectangle works this way. The lasso is the same, so you actually have to go over the point. But check to make sure, if you run into it again, make sure that you're over an actual vert and not a face. When you're dragging, you're getting the green. I get empty. What do you mean by empty? So it doesn't show up as green? No green or red when using Alt. So when you drag out and then you hold Alt, it's not doing anything. What is it? Any color? Does it look like this? Like black and white? I'm wondering, it could be, I mean, I know this is maybe too simple of a troubleshoot, but maybe your Control, Shift, or Alt keys are getting stuck somehow. You know, it would be better if you have it right now, just record like a little video and upload it to Google Drive. The best thing for you to do, just the white border lines. Oh my goodness, yeah, I'm gonna have to see that because nothing's coming to mind as to why that would be happening now. If you record a short video, go to support and just post a ticket and post that video. Most likely that's going to get sent up either to me or Paul or a couple other people. I'll make sure Will and Matthew send it to me, and I can help you with it there, because until I can see it, I'd have to see what the project is, and it's weird that you would only get, that sounds like a graphical display issue almost. Yeah, I'm sorry, don't have a direct answer for you now, but yeah, record it and send it in the ticket. Yeah, no worries about the disruption at all. I'd like to figure out what that is just to be clear. It almost sounds like the stencil, like when the stencil outline looks like that. Anyways, yeah, just do that, and it'll be better for me to answer you there, because then I can go through step by step and check. Okay, so what I want to do, I want to grab okay, I'm going to go back to this guy and do a little sculpting. So eventually I'm going to have to turn this guy into a Lego looking piece, which something that I can do before I go into sculpting is really cool tip. If you guys haven't used this before, is if you want to make something, we have an old sort of voxel based algorithm, this old remesh algorithm right here. So I've got this sculpt. This thing's got a few subdivisions up to about 1 million. So I can make, let's see, I'm going to do a duplicate of this. Let's do block remesh, and let's turn all these off. So you can take, this thing's obviously super smooth, and if you go into the subtool remesh, you can turn the polish all the way down to 0, and then by clicking remesh, what it's going to do, go through and actually remesh this whole thing to a voxel based mesh. So if I solo this thing out, you'll see here at the bottom, we basically get this final remesh that's all blocky, which, you know, I could just do this as a stylistic choice. So if I wanted to take this then go in and reduce it or turn it into something that looks a little bit more Lego-like. So that's kind of my goal here with this, is then I can go in and I could apply some paint to it. But for now, I'll turn that off. And I'll mess with those settings. I can get different resolution levels, like if I want to reduce the amount or make more fine sort of pixelated points, I could do that. But I do want to sort of finalize and touch up this sculpting just a bit. So let's do that. Get some reference over here. Let's try again. Oh no. 18 million, that's nuts. We don't need that much. Do the old paintbrush. Alright. So looks like I'm yeah, I can keep messing with this. Like sometimes I get a little crazy with trying to get poly count. Like I obviously don't have enough topology in that range, so let's try this. That's the old one. This has paint on it too. Let's get rid of that guy. Save this really quick. So wait, Doug, you never answered my question about Star Wars. What's the general consensus? What'd you think? What did anybody think? I just saw it last night for the first time. I gotta say, I didn't hate it. Which I wonder if that's blasphemy. There we go. That's better. Oh, that's right. I forgot. I was going to actually go in, do a quick ZRemesh. So I don't know if you guys run into this, like, you know, I'm up to 4 something million, which I think this thing started off as a Dynamesh, and maybe I didn't project or do the right kind of remesh, or didn't spend enough time on it. So like stuff like this just drives me crazy. Like I want to get in there, and 4 million I should be able to get it. So what I'm going to do is just kind of define some of these creases here. So if you get this into that base mesh as well as you can at that level, I can go in, even if it's a mess, I'm going to go in. Actually, no, I don't want to do too much. Maybe pinch would be better. well, let's do this really quick. So if you ever want to just like crank up your topology or get something to flow a little bit better around those rings, for example, just make a copy. And then I've got solo on, so I'll just solo this one. And I'm going to Z-remesh this. As long as you get the subdivision level, like I don't need it at subdivision level 5, but I can leave it at 5. 4 million might take a little longer to remesh, not too much. But symmetry on, I might crank up my target to like 8. So it's not going to hit 8 with adaptive on, but it might be more like 15-ish. But I just want Z-remesher to build a new low mesh more around some of these edges here so I get a little better sculpting. Everyone SBFF, this is ZBrush. Thanks for tuning in. This stream we're going over, we're doing ZBrush Legos. So I'll give you some examples here. I'm actually sculpting a piece that I'm eventually going to turn into Legos. Yeah, see, that's not working out. So in that case, if I wanted to get better topo in this area or higher res, I can go in to use the poly paint, and I can turn up my color density to like say 4, say 3. So what it's going to do is it's going to assign, you'll see the color, the primary color. When I change the slider, it's going to change that, the main color here. So a range all the way up to 4 is going to be the highest density. I'll set it to 3. So what I can do is I'm going to fill the mesh with white. Set this to 3. Go to, say, the standard brush with just RGB. And I'll do freehand with no alpha. And then I can kind of go in here and just paint this color here. And then I could hold shift with no Z add and kind of just blend it. But I for sure want to make sure that the red is in that area there. And then now let's Z-remesh it with that. So that's just going to add more density to that area, which will make it so much better for me when I want to reproject it and get that kind of topo in there. You got your 4R8 license 3 days ago. We do Maker 420. That's great. Dougie, you gave Star Wars 2 shrugs with a smile. Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like I can't judge a movie. I feel this might be a little crazy, but I can't judge a movie unless I see it 3 or 4 times. I just rewatch movies over and over and over. And honestly, it's like it becomes a little daunting to like when you're in the theater compared to when you're at home, you know, like that always makes a bit of a difference too. So like you got to watch it at home and then watch it on a regular TV, and if it still has the same impact, like Interstellar I can watch on any device and I'll still love the movie, you know. That's me. But this Star Wars I loved in the theater. Like even watching the Jurassic World 2 trailer at Star Wars I thought looked way better than it did when I watched on slashfilm.com like 3 days ago, you know. So I can't say for certain, but I did like it overall. Like I thought it was pretty good. Maybe I'll feel different when I watch it again. I should probably go see it in the theater at least one more time too, you know. But I don't know. It's a new generation of people, you know. We can't. I guess we can't please the old generation and the new, or maybe there's just something wrong with the new generation's outlook. I don't know. The age difference between, like, if you've seen Star Wars. Gosh, like some of you probably remember what Star Wars is like when they went through that whole VHS to DVD, and then they kept redoing scenes and adding stuff. And I didn't even remember thinking it was cool at the time. And I go back and I watch some of that stuff. And I'm like, this is just like they just, you know, keep going over and over the same stuff and never introducing anything like really new. I liked this new one. I think what I liked about it is that they weren't afraid to try something new. I guess that's what my hat's off to them for at least like experimenting with some things. Like Rian Johnson, you know, if you watched any of his other movies, Brick was one of my favorites. That was one of his early movies. And then what was the other one? Looper? Looper was a good one too. But this is his first big feature, which, you know, say what you want. It looked great. I think there was some really interesting stylized shots as far as visual effects goes, like the scene where they go to hyperspeed through the Dreadnought or one of the big ships. There's some great visuals. Sorry, I'm checking on the chat. Oh yeah, we do make a 420. Glad to hear you got your 4R8 license. Are you just getting into ZBrush? Is it your first time, or have you ever used ZBrush before? Dad, 2003, what brush were you using to cut the detail? So when I'm going into, like, if I want to go through and like sort of slice, this is the Dam standard, short for Damien Canderla. You'll see when I hover over it. So this one I always like to use, like, if I want to go in and just kind of add a crease. If you just draw by default, it cuts in. So the default for this brush is Z sub. So when you hold Alt for this one, it actually adds this nice little high, like finely controlled crease line. So if you hold Alt key along this edge, you can kind of go through and add a little crease. So that it kind of has almost like a pinch effect. But then there's also a pinch brush, which basically just takes the geo and that surrounding area of the brush stroke and then kind of brings it all together. So I always kind of do a combination of both, but I'm still just getting into, like, here, let's see. I need to do one quick remesh. Let's remesh a little bit higher. Baby's first puke. Yeah, this is Aladdin. This is right now I'm doing the Cave of Wonders. So this is actually for a scene that I'm putting together with a coworker of mine, which I can give you a quick demonstration while this thing's rendering. We're doing Lego project with ZBrush. So basically I'm doing all the assets creation for my coworker Ashley, who's really great at rendering. She wants to render an Arnold eventually. So, you know, we've got some test renders here. So we're doing recreation of building all the parts in ZBrush. So building them to scale, building the blocks, building the characters. I can give you some like Aladdin keyshot renders. So this I built all in ZBrush, textured in ZBrush, and then did the final touch up in Photoshop. But this is the kind of the starting piece that I came out with as the character. So for the organic stuff, like what I'm doing now, basically I'm just building this scene. Man, it just doesn't want to take in that area. Oh well, I give up. I'm just going to keep pushing on so I don't waste your guys' time. But I'm building this scene here, so Aladdin's like sort of hanging off the cliff. And eventually I want to take this Cave of Wonders and turn this into Lego as well. So I start with anything organic like this. This is going to be a little tricky. I don't know if I have a perfect solution for it as far as turning this into Lego. Like I might have to go piece by piece, which is pretty much what about this stream is about. Is about using ZBrush to do all these things. But eventually I'm going to turn it into something like this that'll be sort of more voxel based or cube-like. So once I got this thing working, I think we can just depart from this and call it. So I turn off solo. Let's delete this one for now. So I've got his earring. I got some spheres in there for eyes, and then wouldn't curves help with ZBrush? Yeah, curves would help, but to be honest, the more you get into using curves as ZBrush, they definitely help for something like this. It probably would. I could go in. Let's just give it a shot. Let's give it a one shot. It gets more complicated where the adaptive algorithm, when you have this on, it does a great job of analyzing the entire surface by itself, and it works better with the target poly count in that way. But when you get into using your curve strength, so we go to Z modeler or Z remesher. Oh wow, I have a lot of brushes in here. Let's reset this. Z remesher guides. You know what? That's a good point. That'll actually do probably what I need. So I want to get some more curves in here. I think I just don't use it as much, especially when I get into characters. I end up relying on it too much, and it gets more complicated. The more curves you introduce, the less likely you're going to get clean topo in all areas. But let's see. Auto remeshing is very challenging. So let's try that. Curve strength at 50. Let's see what it does. Dad 2006, did you make a mess with pinch? Yeah, it's a tough one. Yeah, I definitely agree. It gets very, what I do is anytime if you get messiness, what I find to be very beneficial is to take, each brush has a preset with different Z intensities, different focal shifts, but if you reduce the Z intensity for anything, especially that one, and actually just kind of goes in, yeah, see, we have to crank up the curve strength a lot, say 100. It goes in and it just reduces the amount of pull it'll have on it, which might help you clean it up a little bit. Yeah, oh, it looks like Predrag. Oh man, you guys are killing me with the usernames. Yeah, you already answered his question. Perfect. Hey yo, see, cursing 100. See, and this, I don't even want to get into this, but yes, doing it right for sure when you got the time. At this point, I'm going to turn this thing into voxels anyway, so who cares? It's not a big deal. But what I want to do is I want to get this going with the scene. So I want to take this thing and I want to do my voxel conversion and get this thing to look at least brick-like, and then I can work out how to make everything else kind of work with the scene. So let's see, the first thing I'm going to do is let's do this remesh. So I showed you guys earlier, if you guys were tuning in, this remesh in Subtool. This is an old remesh, but turning the polish all the way down, the resolution is going to dictate how big those polys are going to be, or those cubes. So I got this sort of brick-like look going, and it's even got the earring, which is great. So it took everything that's visible. Now let's say if I turn on the eyeball, I'll delete this. And now let's try this remesh in this way. So the eyeball's not coming in. You'll see that there's a little poly group for it, which I can play around with that. Maybe I'll do that separate. So let's try that. Let's delete this one. No eyeball, just earring, and actually no, I'm going to do each individual. That way I can do separate shaders and all that. So let's try a remesh of, say, 450, or I'll go up a little bit higher. So you see that kind of really breaks it down and makes it a lot more pixelated, which I think it's going to come down to different reses. I might need to do a couple variations of it to play around with the final render scene, but for now let's do a little bit lower. I think I liked the 128, or maybe I'll go down to say 96. Yeah, not bad. And then let's see, the trick that I could do, if I want to make this look a little bit more Lego-like, I'm just going to grow all to that portion and group this separate to the ground. And then what I could try and do is, looking at this thing from the top view, if I go to my polygroups, I can do group front. Let's see if I can reduce the angle. There we go. So you see how, looking at it from the top view, reducing my angle all the way down to 1 in polygroups, I can do group front, and it's going to assign a polygroup just to those top faces. So then I could go in, let's try something with the Nanomesh trick that I was doing earlier. So I could go to my, I need to find my master Lego parts here. I don't know if I have a solo cap in here, but I could take, let's take this one, duplicate that, and let's just extract this part, and let's do a delete hidden. So I could smooth this thing out. I'm just clicking D to turn on my dynamic, and maybe go down to like level, I don't want to go too high, I'll say level 1, and I'm actually going to apply this. So now I've got a range of subdivisions. Let's go delete lower. So deleting lower, now I've just got no subdivisions. Gonna pick something that's a little bit cleaner, but I don't know if I need all these. Like, this is where I get into the reduction. So like, I could definitely get rid of this edge loop for that top cap. I can go into delete edge loop, and I can remove this, and maybe this one. So if you hover over the poly, you get the direction of the normal. So if you point it at the edge loop, sometimes it wants to do other things. You can kind of go around and try different ones. Maybe I'll try this. Or another thing I like to do is if you close it off with another edge loop, or actually, let's try this. Delete. So just completely delete that poly group. Hover over the edge, do close convex. So we can get rid of that. And then we can just delete these guys. So now we got triangles. So cut down and reduce the amount of quads in there and reduce the amount of points. So this thing's as low as I can get it. And then let's get rid of all these edge loops too. Make sure I got hidden deleted. Okay, cool. So then I could take this guy, and if you wanted to, I could go up here, do a little bevel of the edge loop to just add a little piece in there so I get some light bouncing off of that eventually. And then look at this thing from the top view. Go to brush, insert mesh, and then brush, Nanomesh brush. And we can go back to the guy here. And then we could hover over just the groups that I made from the group by front, and let's do insert nanomesh and do, well, we can just click and drag and hold shift. So that's going to do all the polygrouped versions. So it's kind of like all the exposed caps will be the Lego caps themselves. And I can go to my nanomesh and we could do either fit, see a fit of 1, or actually know what, this is perfect for fill. The size of 1, and then do an offset of 1. Oh, sorry, just kidding. No rotation. Kind of just eyeballing it at this point. Yeah, that works pretty good. It may not be exactly perfect. What I could do is I could, like, I've been pretty anal about trying to get the thing to be the right height, which is like a certain amount of millimeters, but I think this works pretty good for at least a previs. So then I could go to 1 to mesh, so I can apply that. Now we got that thing working. And even you'll see, like with the base, like I had the original sort of sand dunes going, so it kind of added some blocky elements in there. And I could even go in and grab this guy, and let's do that for this one. So polygroup with the angle at 1, group front, it's going to get all those top ones. And then we could select this. I'm going to make sure my double-sided surface normals are on. Okay, so this is definitely not the same group. Cool. But I'm going to cycle through different groups just to make sure those two are different. And then let's try that for this. So size of 1, fill, or fit. And, well, rotation really doesn't matter. It's a cylinder, but 0.4, 0.3, sweet. And just check these for reference. Yeah, this one's a little bit bigger. So I'm going to do this like 0.75 size. Alright. That's looking pretty good. That worked out well. So then I'll do 1 to mesh for that. So this is all into one mesh, even though those caps are separate. Yeah, I'm just checking the chat really quick to make sure there's no questions. Dad 2003, you said, is that Lego Brush IMM? This so this Lego, it's not an IMM right now. I basically just made one. Hopefully, I don't know if I explained that while I was going through the steps, but I've been doing individuals. Like I've been taking each part, like I have all these like this whole Lego array here. For example, if I go in, I could go to Z plug or go to transform. Let's do X and Y and let's expose. Do a quick expose. So like this is a sort of a library of all the parts that I've made, which yeah, some of them I have been doing IMMs per situation, especially for Nanomesh. It comes into play. It helps a ton. So yeah, like I could take all these, I could go to brush, I could do insert multi-mesh, and then I got all these things into an array, which work great. I've only been doing sparing stuff with Nanomesh like I just did, so in that case I would definitely want it. So yeah, yes, in that in particular case I just did brush, a single insert mesh. So that was just an actual insert mesh, which is ZBrush terminology. Oh, looks like you guys are solving real issues over there. Dynamic subdivisions. Alright, so this thing, I don't know, this thing's working pretty good for me. I think I can try and integrate, I want to try and integrate this into the scene now so I can maybe get the fly through going and see how that works. So now that everything's been nanomeshed into one tool, let's go, I'm going to reconfigure my scene here and do a little, let's clear out the quick saves. And let's do one. Jeez, it's already 5:30. And let me grab my scene. And that's not it. This one. So I'm going to insert the Cave of Wonders. And let's go to the old scale tool, solo this out. I'm going to alt click to put it at the center. And then this is where I get into like, okay, do I want this stuff to, if I want it to match, I can, here's what I do. Like if I'm trying to make sure the scale is accurate or closely accurate, I can take any one of these, if I solo this, alt click on one of these points here, and then reset the tool so it's perfectly aligned. And then turning on transparency, I'm just using this to kind of reference to, say, these other pieces. So if those, I don't know how well these caps sort of match up with the bricks, but if you're going based on cap size, just scaling them up roughly to be the same size. And then, so I kind of moved it away from the center so I can, without symmetry on, alt click to unmask, and then just left mouse button click on the home icon that puts it in the perfect center. So then now I've got this thing working, and the cave itself is like the neck area. Dang, it almost needs to be bigger, huh? It definitely does. Oh well. Wow, the uvula got a really crazy remesh in there. That thing's looking crazy. It's almost too big. It takes up too much space. Okay, let's see. I'm going to take this guy. So let's just grab a little selection there. Get rid of everything else. So I'm just doing Control-Shift-X to grow all. And then I can solo this out. I just want to get rid of all, get a clean selection of this area here. Turn on display surface normal. Oh, they are on. Okay. So select. Okay. If I grow all, see, yeah, that's not a clean selection. I'm going to get rid of that too. So I just closed Alright, split this off. So I got these things hidden. So I might go in, make sure that part's hidden, go to Modify Topo, Split, Hidden. Now this thing is separate, so I can solo this out and just do a little Z modeler. So I can hover over the edge, go to the bridge, and then on edges I can start sealing this up. And then what I always do if I want to connect these, I just go insert an edge close to it, close, and then hover over the poly and do a stitch 2 points. So click 1, click 2. Should be doing this with symmetry. So then those are perfect. And then if you're really crazy about this, like you can either hover over the poly, go to the slide, and just slide this into place close, or you can select everything and then use the gizmo, alt click on the edges here, and just flatten them with the scale tool. But I mean, really, I don't know if that really matters. So I'm going to turn that off for now because I'm just trying to get a better visualization of this. And then let's see. Anytime, if you're ever like getting up into an area and you want to close something off, the little tip, if it helps you guys, changing your material, like the matte cap gray has pretty dark diffuse shadows, so I could go in and maybe, I always change it to like any of these sketchy ones. These give you a better display of just polyframes in general, so you can always try that. That always helps me bridge these edges. Actually, let's do this. And then another tip is like when you're trying to rotate around. I don't know if you guys run into this. If you don't use right-click navigation, it's super beneficial. Number one, because you can hover over an actual vertex point. So if I want to like rotate along, like if I click on this thing and my rotation is going on based on the pivot with right-click. So the pivot is wherever I click on, so it's rotating over there. I'm not getting what I need. But if I hover over this guy, hold right-click and rotate, that becomes my pivot. And then I can control right-click to zoom into that as well. It probably would be easier if I just split these off. 1, 2. And let's go insert single edge. And then we'll stitch that one and that one. Now, this thing I put at the center, so go back to the pearl. I can do a geo mirror and weld in X, which I think should, oh, oops, check my positive and negative side. So it looks like positive side's on the right. So actually, this is where I actually I made custom macros. If you guys have been following my stream, I have in my Sir Scallywag ZBC thread. I should post that in here again. I made some just custom macros like local mirror and weld, mirroring, all these kinds of things. Like I don't like to go back and forth in the menus, so I've created my own toolkit and I've assigned that to the 2 key. So then in this mirror and weld I can do a quick, I have a global mirror weld, local, and then global mirror and local mirror. So I could do a quick mirror in X and then mirror and weld in X. So I can do those kinds of operations a little bit more efficiently, which I'll post that at the end of this thread. Remind me if you guys are, if anybody's interested. That's basically just where I'm there. I haven't been doing a very good job, honestly, of checking it, but I wanted it to be a way that we could all kind of communicate. If you guys are watching the stream and sharing images, sharing custom UIs, all that kind of stuff, or if you guys are following along with me. Okay, so that thing's in place. Now the rest is going to be trying to make this thing look like I need to create the space in there. So I think what I need to do is, let's try this. I'm going to get rid of these caps really quick. So I'm just selecting, if I grab, the caps are separate shells, so if I control shift drag over just one of these verts, to grab this shell. It's just grabbing some of these polys in here. And then visibility, this is the hotkey. If you guys don't use it, definitely try this visibility grow all, Control Shift A. So that's going to grow out to that whole shell. So that's splitting the caps and this. So now I can go to my modify topo split hidden. So the caps are now separated. So I have this by itself. And then what I want to do is I want to start to maybe just use ZModeler to start building away or actually creating a gap in there. So I can hover over a poly. I want to do QMesh. Most likely is when I either want to extrude or QMesh. QMesh is probably the best. And then we have the alignment, which is a 10th step. So this will do like if I go into a poly here and I snap to a poly, you see it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So in this case, I just want to do a full step. So if I just drag upwards, it'll do one single step. So what that should allow me to do is if I just do one of these, I can go one step. So that it's going to remember that setting I just did. So now I can alt click on these polys and just single click so it remembers it. All I need to do is click once and I'll actually start pushing these back. So first thing I'll do is maybe start just growing this stuff away. And I can even do alt and click multiple faces. And then left mouse button click and it remembers that too. And I could do all these guys at once. And let's see, last but not least, what I want to do is let me grab this group, and it's also assigning a poly group, which is great, so I can select it and do that either grow all, or you can just grow it. So there's a grow and shrink. So Control Shift X will grow out. So what I'm trying to do is I can isolate out this thing here. Actually, let's do this. So I got this clean green group. So I need to grab some section in here. There we go. So the green is right there. Get rid of these guys. Trying to give myself some sort of tunnel or view to see where this thing's going straight down. So let's get rid of, just make a nice little clean selection. So I can group this as one. So that bottom group now, this thing should give me an idea of where this is going. So let's see if I can, now that this is its own group, I can isolate, selecting this by itself. I want to do two separate groups here, so I can auto group and then hover over these green polygroups now. And instead of doing the QMesh as single, I could do polygroup all, and I should be able to just click and it'll do a single extrusion. So it's still remembering that first initial extrusion. So let's see if I can, okay, there you go. So now I can see I'm starting to get in there. And one little tip that might help me is, as long as I'm not going to move the placement, if I go through, let's remove these top ones. This is going to give me a clear view to see everything. ZModeler is not going to work when you hide stuff and do extrusions. Like if I go in and I start extruding stuff, it's eventually you may run into issues. It can work in some situations, but in others it gets a little bit more complicated. So if I just hide that portion, I'm going to go to split hidden. So I've just split this piece off completely. Now this one I can work by itself, and I'm only going to deal with the extrusions down here. So go back to ZModeler, go back to a single poly, and let's do one step. So I got to redo the step. It looks like one of these guys just didn't want to complete. Oh no. let's see, what can I do here? Q-mesh this way? Okay, so this one I might want the 10th step so I can get the amount. Oh man, that's getting crazy. Let's try something else. So I might just go do a little stitch to there so I can close off that group. Now these are obviously not straight. Another easy tip that might help you guys, I could just grab that area. So I just selected those flat faces, Control A to mask it, bring everything back, and then inverse. Now I can all use the gizmo, alt click on the flat parts, so it's going to snap to those normals, and I can just scale this back into place here to make that fix. Alright, so these guys are going to have to connect or close basically, so I can create the space. Ah, 546. Alright. So anytime you run into this, you see how this is sort of, it's not, you get into some situations where now that we're getting close to having nothing visible, if it's going into empty space, going up, I either can go back to the full step. That's actually working pretty well. But other times, instead of going up towards empty space, just go towards another poly in this direction. Yeah, see that one, by closing it this way, leaves a face here. If I go all the way up, it's leaving a face there. So maybe I can go up here and go this way. And then let's just, there we go. Alright, so I got my cave tunnel. Hopefully this is going to be big enough. If I might need to make this guy a little larger. But eventually what I'm going to have to do, I got to seal these two back together. So I haven't moved the position of any of these things. So I can go back to my split part, and I'm going to take this one, and this one's sitting up above. So I'm going to control arrow up. So this one's on top, this one's on bottom. So I'm going to take this. That's just like a left brain, right brain default that I do, but I'm going to merge this down on top of the other one. It's going to say it's not undoable, which is fine. Click OK. So I just merged it, but if I were to go in and turn dynamic on, dynamic subdivisions, if I just press D, you'll see that it's going to smooth and those verts aren't welded. So Shift D to turn it off. I want to weld those verts that I split off earlier. Easy way to do it, inside of geometry, you can go to modify topo and there's a weld points. So the weld points distance is a default at 1. So as long as I haven't moved these, 1 should do it. So just click this once, it's going to weld those points. If I click D now, everything's sealed back up. And I got it all working nicely. So now there's like a nice little tunnel in there, which, you know, I think it's going to have to be, I want to make it about as large as this space. So I might need to scale him up eventually. But let's see what we can do with making a nice little render of this guy. Oh, I got an idea. Let's try something else here. I'm going to bring in just really quick, because another shot I was thinking about is doing like a silhouette of him walking into the cave, which would be kind of like, I think I have one in here. Oh, I hate this thing. This new. Yeah, like that scene right there. That's what I'm looking for. Let's try that really quick. So I'm going to load the character. I think I have a blank version that's unposed. Yeah, there we go. So he's just kind of holding the thing, the lamp. And let's do a quick little scene here. So I'll do I'm going to group all the Nanomesh caps together and then group all this stuff together for now. Let's do Lego Cave of Wonders. Oh man, those caps are going to have to be redone. Oh well, let's see how that works. Obviously the scale's not matching, which that's going to come down to how I physically, before I make these voxel based things, I don't have to scale up that sculpt up a ton. But hey, it could be a good previs shot. Okay, this is too early for the lamp. He definitely doesn't have a lamp yet. And let's take the arms really quick. So I just want to do a quick little pose scene maybe. So I'm going to turn off that really quick. Now I've got the hands and arms separated, which I can actually probably go in and just merge these together. Let's go. Arms and wrists, merge down, merge down. Now I can solo this out, and I could take this and just do a little. For now I want to do the joint, like I want it to pivot on the joint, so I'm just doing a mask. If you haven't done this, the hold control, there's the mask perfect circle, so I can go through and just get a little, like the joint is going to be somewhere on that portion there. Now if I inverse, hold press gizmo, so I'm turning gizmo on, and then alt click on the go to unmask center, it's going to put it right at the perfect center of those pieces. So the first thing though, I want it to be, you'll see that it's not aligned to the polys, so I could alt click and drag along these to make sure it's snapped to the surface. So this is giving me a gizmo aligned to it, and then alt click to go to the center. So now it's aligned to them, and I can clear the mask now and then bring back everything. So I've got this thing perfectly snapped to the joint along where the piece is going to go. So then if I want to do that sort of pose, so he got his arm sort of up and one sort of out. Let's see, I'll go, whoops, let's go back to the mask. Maybe mask lasso, no symmetry. So we'll do right arm. So this one's kind of going back a little. Inverse, let's go back to this. So I just got to reset this up. Mask perfect circle. So I'm drawing it out, and then once I get it sort of in the right place, I can let go of control and then hold the space bar to pan it across. So I'm kind of just getting it rough in there. So inverse, hold alt and drag. I can either click and drag to make sure, or just hold alt and click once. Should do the trick as well. But I always like to make sure and just drag to make sure it's aligned, and then alt click the unmask center. And Now I can clear that mask, bring this back, and just grab, whoa, go back to my mask lasso or pen and inverse. So it might help to just split the arms as a separate piece, but alright, and then maybe let's do the leg really quick. So solo this guy out. No symmetry. So this works out pretty well because just based on the pivot of the geo, I can put the pivot here on the vertex point. And I can maybe rotate his foot that way. Inverse, rotate this that way. Alright, let's give that a shot, eh? Oh man, I'm turning into Paul Gabriel, throwing A's out all the time. Alright, let's see. We're going to do one key shot render to finish this off. I only got a few minutes, but I'm going to start at least trying to set this up. Oh, and one more thing I just thought of. Oh, there's just not enough time. I need to do like 4-hour streams, I think. Kyle, if you're listening, we should talk about that. I think it's necessary. Let's see. I mean, if I grab a... I wanted to do... What if I do like... If it's an outdoor scene, I could do sort of a cloud. So I could go... Let's go with... Make this a poly mesh really quick. Like, just do some like Lego clouds, like a moonlit silhouette. Oh, let's do a moon. I'm gonna go over this stream or the stream time, whatever. Hopefully you guys don't mind. Go Lego moon, Lego clouds, and let's go insert. I might even do a quick like Lego ground too. So I'm just inserting the terrain, which that's here. The terrain tool, actually, we can go to the 3D meshes. So if you click on any of these meshes, you got the terrain 3D tool. So this is just a very simple tool in 3D mode as long as it hasn't been converted to a poly mesh. If you go to the initialize menu, you've got these profile curves. So you can actually control the terrain, like if I wanted to do sort of like a desert sort of scene. And then I can go here, do the horizontal profile. So like from this angle, alright, and then you could add a little bit of noise in between it, like in that angle, and then let's do a little bit of noise here. Alright, so then let's go back, and I'm going to make this, so I'm going to rename this Lego Sand Dunes. So it's not perfect, but let's delete that. We can tweak it. So I can go to insert Lego Sand Dunes. So I'm going to scale this up. So I'm going to insert Lego Sand Dunes into here, and then I'm going to insert the Lego clouds into here. They're that sphere and the moon. So then I'll reset this so it's all in this one scene. So for the sand dunes, we can take this and scale this thing up, way up. Maybe just flatten it a little. Stretch it out. Now, without subdivisions, it's not going to it's going to have those jagged edges if I didn't control the profile curve, but if I add some subdivisions to this, it's going to start stretching this thing out, and that's not looking great. But let's see. I wonder, I'm just going to go to Google really quick and let's see if we can get a top view. So we can grab a large image. If we can get a top of, yeah, hey, that one's pretty good. 1000 by, yeah, that works. Ah, it's a stock image. That should work. Alright, so I'm going to save this image. Sand ripples. Now I can take this, because it's a flat plane, we don't really need to deal with too much with if you're using surface noise. So all I'm going to do is go into surface noise, actually load this texture, and then we can do alpha scale. Oh, let's see, let's change the strength a lot, and then the scale of it is going to be dependent on there we go. So no, I'm going to do no mix. There we go. We can do UVs. There we go. So if we turn off relative, we should get a little bit better. Okay, well, let's see. Another thing I could do is, it's all I mean, because this is a color image, what I probably need to do is take this and just make it a grayscale. So we can make it more contrast blacks and whites. That'll help a ton. Alright, let's go. There we go. Let's try this one. So I'll save this, I'll say a PNG sand ripples mod. No compression. Let's try that guy. Or even better, well, let's see, let's give it a shot. I'm going to try it a couple times. And then also I could go into my noise plugin. This is where we can get crazy, like, oh, I bet the wood one would be great. So this wood plugin gives you some pretty awesome, so we have no mix. Alright, let's see what this will do. Just to give it some kind of elements. Like, So I could do a little remesh of this one. Oh, whoops, I gotta turn everything off for that. $300, $350. So I'm just dropping this thing down to the bottom so I can remesh it. There we go. Just doing it with symmetry, but that's fine. I wonder how this is gonna look. So 2, modified topo, delete hidden. So Lego moon, that's good. Now the clouds, this I was actually gonna do a little bit more. So I can make this into an insert mesh. So I'm just holding control and dragging with the gizmo and to duplicate the unmasked parts. Yeah, that's pretty good. So let's go Geo, Dyna, just remesh these together. You could do a little polish, and then you can maybe like play around with the, there's a swirl or spiral. You can start playing around with the spiraling the clouds, but I think what I'm going to do just really quick is now take these and let's remesh this with no polish and say 400. No, I say 200. Maybe 128 is just the magic number. Yeah, that's cool. We'll see what that looks like. Alright, so I'm going to delete all these ones. Turn that off. So I'm going to bring this guy up to the top. And the moon as well. Let's put the moon back behind it. Oh, you know what? All this stuff's gonna have to go on lower. So another quick tip. The last thing. Sorry, I'm getting crazy with this. I just want to get one good visualization. So I want to bring all these down so I can at least maybe see them within the shot, since I want to focus on here. So I can turn on the transpose selection. So select all selected subtotals. This little stack turns on, and you can hold Control Shift and drag anything within the selection, it's going to highlight only these. Everything else gets this little striped line, and I can move all these things down as long as they're unmasked. Yeah, those have a mask on them. So let's try it again. So turn this on, grab everything. Now I can bring these down. And maybe just push it back really far. And then when you're done, Control-Shift-Drag, and that moves the selection, and then make sure you turn this off. If this is on, it's going to move all your subtools. So then this thing jumped a little bit, so I might bring this down. Yeah, okay. So quick save. Alright, so I got the keyshot thing set up, but let me do one more, set it over, and then we can go check it out. Oh, and then last but not least, I actually want to do, let me duplicate this moon. I'm going to rename this emissive mouth. So I'm going to take this duplicate of the moon, I'm going to turn on transparency, bring this, I'm going to put this down in the actual tunnel. So bring this way up here, scale this thing down a bit. So if I put this roughly inside, yeah, like right in there, we can put a material on this so we can actually make that sort of glow or kick that light with keyshot. We'll see how that works. So I got everything's on, and then let's do one more render with keyshot. Alright, so I'll bring this over to the main view. Oh, and one last thing I can do is, like all this stuff, the scene itself, like everything else in keyshot, you see how the environment's really, really small, like the bubble. So one thing you can do, let me quick save really quick. I got all of my main elements working. This is where the transpose selected option to do all works really well. If you just want to quickly, if you've ever had this run into this before, you need to scale everything down, you can use the transpose mesh or T-pose the mesh, merges it together, shrink it. But if you want to do it really quick, just alt click on the home axis, and I'm going to click transpose all, and then this should allow me to scale everything down. There we go. And I can turn this off. So this is just shrinking the scene size, and then I'll render that one more time over to keyshot. So that'll just bring everything down. That way you don't have to adjust keyshot settings, or if you ever have to do that for whatever reason. I always prefer to do that, because then the environment settings, if you guys have ever rendered in keyshot, like changing this, the size of this too much, will become an issue sometimes. Alright, so then let's get up in here. Oh, I forgot to do the blocky. I wanted to do this for the ground. I wanted to do the old remesh for that one. Let's go to subtool, no polish. I'm going to do this one at like 300. Let's see what it does. Yeah, that's pretty cool. But let's go more, like 500. So make those blocks really small. There we go. Oh shoot. I'm going to turn everything off really quick. So only this guy by himself, remesh that. Cool. So that's just giving it like, I don't know, just a little bit more Lego look. It's giving you that sort of voxel based kind of look. I think I saw somebody mention Minecraft in there earlier, which definitely, yeah, bringing in the Minecraft. Let me turn all my other stuff on too. So Lego Sand Dunes is on, the moon, you miss a mouth, the clouds, the tiger, and then Aladdin himself. Like I could take this and just maybe shrink it like a little bit, or just scaling it downwards so it doesn't have the same sort of blocky look. Sweet, that's better. Now do a quick little render. I think that's gonna look better. Oh yeah. Oh, but see now, okay, so this is where the camera's gonna come in. So I'm gonna have to play around with the scene. Let me take a look at the reference really quick, or at least put this thing up. We don't need Photoshop anymore. So that's looking pretty good. But then now let's get the moon moving over in the right place. So I'm gonna take, this is where I need to go. I'm gonna hide those, split those into separate parts. So now these are their own subtools. So then now I can alt click here, turn on this selected, and also with this option you can control shift click on one subtool and it'll just isolate that, and then control shift click on another to add it. So then I can just kind of readjust this. So I'm moving this over like so, and let's clear, render it to key shot. See if that gives us, there we go, the moon's almost there. Sweet. So I might make a new little render cam, and let's lock this one. Or unlock it, let's save it, and then lock it. So now I got the free. So let's do some quick plastic. Grab the shinies. It's almost like a bluish purple. Yeah, maybe like that. And then I could copy, actually, you know what? Let's do, copy this and paste it on here. Unlink it though, and we can make this just like a little bit more dark. Let's do a nice emissive cool for that. Crank that up a lot. So then now the lighting environment is going to come into play here. Outdoor, sun and sky. Ooh, too much. change the color. So I'm just doing a background color instead. Okay, let's say that's done. And one more little emissive. Sorry guys, I haven't been checking the chat. Hopefully you guys are okay. Emissive worm. Just gonna get this last little render going. And then I'll answer any last little quick questions. I want this to be a nice, like, bright, sort of vibrant orange. Let's make this like 17. Let's see how that works. Show all parts. Oh, actually, paint. Let's go plastic. So I'm just alt dragging to use the ZBrush paint for now. Oh, there we go. Now we're getting there. Let's do a little bit more samples. Maybe if I move this up a little bit. Sweet. All right, well, man, I could do this all day. Sorry if anybody's been just staring at me, watching me go through render settings, but the Phoebe said you're good. Okay, cool. I'm glad you guys are good. Let's just do a quick little. I'm just gonna let that thing sit while it's going, but you get the idea, right? Kind of going through and getting some rim light, but I would probably mess around with get all kinds of crazy stuff going with trying to get the bounce light and all that stuff. So hopefully that gives you an idea. I think I'm pretty much spent on the Lego project for a while. I think I'm going to finish it up with Ashley, and I'll be posting it on my ZBC thread, like the renders. We'll be doing this stuff for a while, probably. So you guys can probably look forward to seeing some like full tutorials on how to do all this stuff for real in Z Classroom. I'm planning on doing those eventually and kicking out some final high quality renders with all this stuff. This is all just kind of playing around, but just to let you guys know, if anybody else is there, I'm on Twitch right now. I'm going to post this in the chat. I'll be putting all this stuff here in my ZBC thread, the final breakdown and all that good stuff. I don't want to log in. Okay, logging in. Okay, so there's the ZBC thread, and I'm also going to post this on Facebook for anybody else who's watching. And yeah, so that's pretty much it, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed this, and happy holidays for everybody. Yeah, Dougie, very glad to share. Hopefully it was useful for you all. And don't forget about that. Don't forget about the support ticket, Dougie. If you are still having issues with selection brush and all of that, I'll make sure to sit with you and figure that out. And Dad 2003, yeah, Scallywag macros. I don't know if that's a joke, but yes, all seriousness, there are Scallywag macros. If you want them, inside of the link I just posted, I forget which version I have in there right now. It might be like 2.5 or 6. So I got a Dropbox link with the modeling toolkit and the custom hotkeys. And then for the macro stuff, I also have, I think I posted a link on my thread there. And you'll find some other breakdowns I've done. Like I put in a full array mesh breakdown for how to make a watch and using array mesh with live booleans, which you'll find a full link to that one inside of this thread. So yeah, this hotkey stuff is all kind of described here. You'll see the 2 key used to open it up and all that. So hopefully you guys enjoy it, and please, if you guys are interested, like if I see people chatting, you know, on the ZBC thread and posting stuff, like if you want to post your work there or whatever, that'd be awesome, because then, you know, we can kind of communicate there in the off times when I'm not streaming, and that'll make me want to post there more too. So if you guys are into it, it's there. I'm going to keep it going whenever I can. So that's it for now. Happy holidays, everybody, and yeah, be safe, like Dougie said, and enjoy your time off. Definitely gonna enjoy mine. So that's it for this stream. And next time, don't forget ZBrush mashups. We're gonna do it in the next month. My goal is to we're gonna get a couple wheels. We're gonna pick random themes, and I'll just do sculpts of just random stuff. I'll let you guys pick. I'm gonna pick the first one, and then I think at the end of the stream we're gonna pick it for the following ones. I want to make this a thing, so definitely tune in. I would love to have you guys there, and I want this to be more fun and collaborative, and it'll be less me talking about stuff and explaining things, which I tend to just default to as a teacher. So I really want that to be more fun and collaborative with you guys. So hopefully you guys are down for that. That's going to be the plan for the next stream, and I'll be posting more images for this stuff later. So until next time, I'll see you guys on Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, wherever you're watching. All right, take it easy. Bye, everyone.